You are now live on Channel 8 and YouTube.
Outstanding. Thank you, Hannah. Good evening. Time is now 6:30 p.m. I'm Vice Chairman Tim Toth. I'd like to call the Select Board Business Meeting to order on this 23rd day of March 2022. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to state for the record, we're not only being streamed live on TCTV, Cable Channel 8, and our YouTube web platform, but this evening's recording will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. We have the following board members, staff, and expected guests. Board Member Bennett, Board Member Griffiths, Board Member Richards, myself here live and in person, and Chairman Curry is joining us remotely as he's out of town on a business trip right now, but he's carved out some time to be with us. We also have some new employees that will be introduced and a presentation coming to us for the Main Street Bridge repair update. As always, our agenda for the evening has been set no later than 48 hours out by law, publicly available at the official town source for information, templetonma.gov. Although I have discretion as chair to add or remove from the agenda, it has been set to allow for time, personnel resources, and public awareness. Reserve the right to remove agenda items around to best fit our business and guests. Thank you. Okay, moving into our agenda, item 3. Approval of meeting minutes. Approval of minutes of prior meetings. We have in our packets meeting minutes from 3/9, 3/12, and 3/16, 2022.
Mr. Chair, one correction, Mr. Vice Chair.
Go ahead.
On the meeting, in the meeting minutes for 3/23/2022, just a note that Noel Francis is, Noel's name is Nowell. It's just a spelling.
For which date is that?
March 23rd. Oh, that's night. Sorry, March
night.
12th, 2023. Saturday, the
Saturday.
Saturday when the advisory committee joined us. Sorry. Noel Francis is Nowell.
So correction on Mr. Francis's name, the correct spelling. Thank you for that. Any other comments from the board?
Also, sorry, I just looked at my
That's
notes.
okay.
The police department, it says, the state says there needs to be 3 officers per 1,000, but when I looked over the notes that I had from the budget meeting, it was 3.5 per 1,000.
And that is from Saturday the 12th.
Yes, sir.
Any other errors, omissions, or corrections required?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
I make a motion to accept the minutes with amendments for March 9th, 12th, and 16th as amended and presented.
I have a motion on the floor with amendments as presented to approve the meeting minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second,
I have a motion approved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I will call again. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Vice Chair, I'm only going to recuse myself from 3/12/22 otherwise. So do I just say I'm abstaining from those particular meetings?
Yes. Okay, understood. Very good. And hearing no further, we will call for the vote. How do we vote, Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths?
yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, excluding 3/12/22.
Duly noted, and I vote yes as well. Mr. Curry, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. We have no executive session minutes to go through. We're moving along, citizen input. No citizen input. Okay. New business. Introduction of new town employees. I don't see Jackie with us or Linda Erali from the Templeton Senior Center staff. Jackie is remote. Jackie, I so apologize.
That's okay, Tim.
Will Linda be joining us this evening?
Unfortunately, she will not. I apologize, but we'll work hard to get her on your April 6th meeting.
Very well, thank you. And representing the DPW, Mr. Zosik.
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the handsome guy over here, Scott Kendall. Scott's gonna be replacing retired David Smart at the DPW. He comes from Gardner DPW, lives in town, so he's gonna be a great asset and good experience comes with him.
Very good. Some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Welcome to the team.
Are you related to Dick?
And representing the fire department. Chief.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Nate Baldwin, newest firefighter, full-time. He's worked locally for a while. He actually comes with us. He is paramedic certified and he is full board certified for the fire department. There's no reason we do not need to send him to the academy. He has been a paramedic now for a little over 2 years and graduated one of the top in his class the first year of Mount Wachusett Community College paramedic program locally that our Captain Laitman happens to run. So he's already hit the ground running and he's doing a great job for us.
Outstanding. Nate,
Awesome.
Outstanding.
welcome aboard. Nate.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief, for that great introduction.
Any other new employees that did not make the list?
That is it.
Okay, that is it. Okay, next on our agenda, appointments, Board of Registrars, Karen Gautreau, Sheila Tallman.
Right, gentlemen.
See, they needed in your packets a memorandum from the town clerk, where she was asked the select board if they could appoint these people you just mentioned.
This letter was dated March 15th, and again, Karen Gautreau, Sheila Tallman requested to select board to appoint the following individuals: Karen through 2024, Sheila through 2025, and that was submitted to us through the town clerk's office. Any discussion from the board?
Mr. Co-Chair, I move to appoint to the Board of Registrars Karen Gautreau through April 30, 2024, and Sheila Tallman through April 30, 2025.
Second.
Motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion? I just have one quick item. I'm pleased to see we have folks stepping up and looking to fill some of the vacant positions on the various boards, committees, commissions around town, and that's always a great thing. Any further discussions from the board? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths,
Yes.
Ms. Richards,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Next on our agenda, presentation, the Main Street Bridge Rehabilitation and Water Main Replacement Alternative Analysis.
We have our engineers here that have been working on this report. You might remember them coming back. I me coming in front of us, geez, a few months ago, roughly.
It was
Jeff?
around Halloween, because I remember some Halloween discussions.
And Andrea and Jeff were working closely with the town, department heads and the water department, so. This happens from up. I know Andrea has some of the documents that are included in your packet, but in a formal binder, if you will. For that, so I'll just give them some time to get situated. Andrea came just in time, so. I could tell Jeff was getting worried. He was going to start the report.
Cut off the press.
All good.
Yeah, so these are the final copies. We had previously sent you an electronic copy in your agenda packet. Yeah, so we have printed final documents for you, and this includes the Mass DOT reports as well as, I think that was the only information that was.
Thank you.
I had emailed you the presentation.
It's all set.
It's all set, great.
Thank you, great job. There's a lot of detail in there.
We also have here Mr. Sozik from our DPW department, Von Davin for the water department that's been working on this project.
Here you go. For you. Okay. Right,
Kelly, can you start to share that?
that's the presentation. You see it on that TV up there?
It's on the
You were.
screen.
So we're here tonight to just discuss the results of the alternatives analysis. So we did look at bridge rehabilitation and the water main replacement. So we considered these two, and so we'll just go through everything. And you can advance the slide, please. Just so you know, we conducted 5 site visits. So Jeff and I, we did a walkthrough after our kickoff meeting with the town. That was on November 8th. So it was just a cursory review of the location, adjacent facilities, just to get an idea of the bridge, the location of the bridge, and the relationship with the water main. And then I came on site November 16th and conducted an assessment of the bridge with another engineer. And the results of that assessment are provided within the report. We did subsurface condition assessment. So we took some geotechnical borings on these 2 days in December, the 3rd and the 6th. And we also conducted a wetland delineation on December 23rd. And then lastly, we did a hazardous materials assessment on January 5th. All of these were conducted by Ty and Bond. We used a consultant for the geotechnical borings. And then we have some slides that just show you the existing conditions of the bridge, just to remind you why we're here. So the existing bridge is it's a three span structure. There are 2 piers, 2 abutments. The current configuration of the bridge is that it's been reduced to a single lane of alternating traffic. This was a result of an inspection that Mass DOT had done, where they determined that these 5 exterior girders, they're numbered 1, 2, 8, 9, and 10 on there, were deteriorated and were not suitable to continue to support traffic. So they were asked that they were taken out of service. They gave this configuration to the DPW, and the DPW implemented this traffic configuration. The girders that are underneath traffic are in satisfactory condition. So it's important that you know that they are suitable to continue to support traffic. Mass DOT will continue, as long as this bridge is in service, to inspect this. I believe it might be biannually. They'll determine if inspections need to become more frequent due to the condition of the bridge. You can advance the slide, please. Just some information from the latest load rating report from Mass DOT, some of the conditions of the members. So the condition rating is on a scale of 1 to, well, really 0 to 9, with 9 being the best and 0 being the worst. So some of the important structural elements of the bridge, the deck was rated a 5, which is fair condition. The sidewalks, girders, bearings, and diaphragms were rated a 4. which is poor condition. So these sections, these elements have advanced section loss, deterioration, spalling, or scour that may impact their load carrying capacity. The substructure elements, so your piers and your abutments, are rated a 7. A 7 is good condition. So this is really good news. That means that your substructure elements don't need any maybe minor modifications, some minor rehabilitation, but they're suitable to continue to serve in their existing capacity. The curbs and the wheel guards, they're rated a 3, which is serious condition. They're not really structural elements. They do more like life and safety. So they're part of the traffic barrier system. So the wheel guards and curbs, the wheel guards are curb mounted. Those work in conjunction with the barrier on the outside of the sidewalk as your traffic barrier system. So this is below is just some of the description of what these ratings mean. Okay, you can advance the slide. These are some photos that were taken by Ty and Bond during our assessment. So the first photo is underneath the sidewalk, just to show you some of the deterioration that we have underneath the bridge. So in this case, the concrete has spalled. Spalling occurs when the reinforcing steel starts to deteriorate and expands, and that forces the concrete off. So we have some spalling underneath the sidewalks, which were, if you could recall, identified as a 4 or being in poor condition. There's a photo of the fascia girder, which has a lot of deterioration. You're not really able to see in some of these photos, you might be able to see a little bit of light through the bottom of the girders. That's because there's 100% section loss at the ends of some of these girders. And this is what we're looking to address. This is why these elements have been taken out of service by Mass DOT. And then of course, the picture of the current configuration showing those Jersey barriers on top of the bridge. Okay, you can advance the slide, please. Jeff can talk a little bit about the condition of the existing water main.
So Jeff Faulkner from Ty and Bond. I'm more of the drinking water engineer. Do work for the water department. So what you're seeing here are some photos of the existing water main. It's believed to be 1950s vintage. It's located in a sidewalk on top of the bridge. It's insulated, protected from freezing, but there are some signs of some of the insulation tearing, and believed it's probably been hit by a vehicle. So generally in poor condition, and it's getting up there in the 70-year age range, which puts it a little bit more in danger of breaking at any point in time. You don't know when it's going to break. So this became a priority for the water department. Once the bridge was restricted to a single lane, they thought of it as a more of a priority project to do.
You can advance the slide. So we looked at 3 bridge rehabilitation options. Alternative 1 is localized repairs. And so the repairs were selected to try to achieve a service life of 20 years. If you're going to invest in rehabilitating your structure, you want to get some time out of that so that you're not going back out there in 10 or 15 years to do more work. So that was the objective of this alternative, was to achieve the 20-year service life. That dictated the extent of the repairs that would be performed. The conceptual cost for the project, so this includes construction cost as well as engineering, is $2,030,000 approximately. And there's the breakdown of the engineering and the construction. Alternative 2 is a complete deck replacement and more extensive structural repairs. One of the differences between alternative 1 and 2 is alternative 1, we priced out just repainting the girder ends where you get the most bang for your buck. So that includes lead paint abatement. We did find lead paint out there, repainting those girder ends. Alternative 2 repaints the entire length of the girders that you're keeping. So that's one of the differences between the two. Alternative 2 also replaces a lot of additional ancillary items, all of the bearings, all of the diaphragms. You're going to be starting with almost a new superstructure, and we're going to keep the existing substructure. As I mentioned, they're in good condition, those elements. And then alternative 3 was a complete superstructure replacement. So The cost for alternative 2 is $2.4 million, including engineering and construction. And for alternative 3, the complete superstructure replacement doesn't reuse any of the components of the existing superstructure. They're all new components, but it does reuse the existing substructure elements. So the cost for that is about $4.7 million. A big factor for alternative 3 with the increased cost is if you're going to replace the superstructure, then you're required to update the substructure elements to the existing seismic design requirements. So just looking at your existing substructure elements, we can assume that they would need some type of retrofit in order to comply with that. So we factored that into the cost estimate as well. So we did look at the pros and cons associated with these alternatives, and I'm just going to touch on this slide before I advance to the next. So alternative 2 and 3 does aim to achieve a longer service life of approximately 75 years. This is an objective of Mass DOT when looking to rehabilitate the structure and investing that money is to achieve a 75-year service life. An additional pro for alternative 1 is that work could be executed keeping the road open. So we estimated the cost of this project, keeping the road open, doing phased construction, which does not require a detour. Alternative 2 and 3, the costs associated with these alternatives, we estimated a complete road closure. So we're looking at a couple of months to close the road in order to complete this. Alternative 2 or 3 could be completed under phased construction. However, it would increase the cost of construction. It would add several months onto the duration of construction. So you have costs associated with a longer construction project. The same amount of work is being performed. So the cost of materials isn't necessarily different, but your construction crew is there longer. Your administration is longer, overhead costs are longer. So you do have costs associated with that. We estimate the cost to phase construction for alternative 2 or 3 is on the order of like a 20% price increase for those. Let's see. Okay, we can advance to the next slide. So some additional considerations, these are around the pros and cons associated with these alternatives, but I just wanted to discuss them a little more in depth because what we are trying to do with providing you with an alternatives analysis is give you tools to help you make a decision as to which alternative works best for your community. So I started talking about phasing construction versus complete road closure and how we had estimated alternative 2 and 3. So one thing that you would want to consider is what is the viable detour if the road was going to be closed. We understand that Hamlet Mill Road seems like the obvious choice for a viable detour, but there's a bridge on Hamlet Mill Road that's not in good condition right now. Mass DOT, I'm not sure that they've put a load restriction on it, but they have given you.
We did a temporary shim.
Yeah, it's shored right now, potentially due to deteriorated stringer ends. Similar.
It deteriorates more, the same thing Main Street is.
Yeah, so there's concern as to whether or not the structure could sustain additional traffic with a detour. And there are also emergency response times that you need to consider. If the bridge was closed and your service is on the north side of the bridge, how is the south side of the bridge going to be accessed? Are those emergency vehicles going to be detoured, or do you have to rely on response from other towns, other communities?
Any comments, Chief?
One is we can use Hamlet Mill for emergency access. It's really not that bad. We have to go all the way to Bridge Street.
Yep.
Or come in from around via Lloyd Road. That would really add to our response times. But there would still be no closer services than us. That's in an area of town where we're still the closest, no matter how we get there.
Okay.
Understood. Thank you for that, Chief.
Yeah, so that's not typically included during the alternatives analysis, the conceptual design phase. That would be considered as you advance the design. So service life, I did talk about how alternative 1 is a 20-year service life. So at 20 years, because it's not a complete deck replacement, you're doing localized repairs to the deck. So where there are existing spalls, it is expected that, within 20 years, you would have to do additional work on the bridge. So, this is 20 years, but you may get to 20 years and you may not need to do additional work. That's just how you roll the dice. You know, we're doing the best we can with the information that we have available, and we're trying to achieve 20 years of service life with the repairs that we've proposed. The other two alternatives were 75 years of service life. That doesn't mean that you don't have to do routine maintenance associated with each alternative to achieve these service lives. So it's recommended that you replace your wearing surface and your waterproofing membrane every 20 years to achieve the most service life you can out of your structure. This is what prevents de-icing salts from getting to your deck in the first place. As your wearing surface starts to break down and your waterproofing membrane, that's when the de-icing salts get to the deck. That's when you're getting those spalls on the underside that we're seeing. We also want to consider the volatility of the construction market and take that into consideration with our cost estimates. These are very conceptual at this time. And we did add some language related to the conceptual nature of these cost estimates within the report. So could be up or down. We're doing the best we can, again, with the information that we have at this time. Another consideration is current inflation rates and when you're planning for construction and budgeting. So if you are looking to construct this next year, we probably have enough money within the contingency to absorb the inflation rates. But if you are planning on starting construction within 5 years, you'll just need to take that into consideration and escalate the costs that we've given you out a couple of years as well. And then project costs and funding sources. So alternative one is the least expensive option at that time, and consider what your funding sources are. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on related to these additional considerations?
I guess just on the cost in general, we see it in our everyday lives right now, cost, gas. It's construction industry is no different. There's labor shortages, there's material delays. So just take that into consideration in the mix here as well.
You notice in your summary and recommendations on 4.3, page 4-11, that you also, talked about the volatility of materials in the quotes that some standard is 10 days, but out to, I think a month, you said. Standard quotes are 10 days.
Yeah, so in the construction industry, we're going to go out to public bid for a project of this nature. Put out construction documents for contractors to bid on. And we generally ask them to hold their price for 30 days. So that once you get your bids in, you can review them and make a decision. On the contractor side, they're pulling their prices together from different material suppliers and vendors. And their material suppliers and vendors are giving them quotes that last 7 days. So there's risk on the contractor side when they give you a bid and are being asked to hold it for that length of time.
Thanks for that.
Unfortunately, that is an industry standard right now.
Yes.
Yeah, and there are allowances built in for fluctuations in material costs associated with cement and steel. So that is standard for bridge construction, but not prefabricated elements. So this is your slide.
Yep. On the water main, we also looked at 3 alternatives. Alternative 1 was to decouple the water main from the bridge entirely by putting the water main underneath the road, underneath the river, and come out on the other side with a method which is called horizontal directional drilling. This came out to actually be the most expensive because of the height of the bridge over the water body and the depths that we would need to go to get underneath the bridge piers. And it appears that there's some steel sheeting left in place from the original construction, so you have to go really deep. So the depths were like 40 feet deep for the water main to go under the bridge. So the cost got relatively high.
Steel remaining, is that what you just said?
Steel sheeting. So when they built the bridge, and maybe you can speak to it, but
They
they
just let it drop in the water?
they put the steel sheeting to hold the earth back while they're
Right.
pouring the concrete for
And
the
it's
piers.
Okay.
Yeah, they're called coffer dams, and it's very standard for bridge construction because it can also act as a form, and it's easier to just leave them in place and cut them off at the water line than it is to try to remove them. So it keeps everything out and allows you to work in the dry within the river. So, and it also then serves as scour protection so that your substructural elements don't get undermined by high flows. So they do serve a purpose, and it is beneficial to have them unless you're trying to directional drill underneath them, then it's not.
Right, then it's not.
And they were confirmed to be there when we reviewed the underwater inspection report.
So alternative one was not the recommended alternative. Alternative two is putting the water main underneath the bridge deck in a utility bay, which is very common construction for bridge utilities. It's out of sight at that point, so all the bridges you drive over, you may not realize there might be utilities hanging underneath. That is actually the recommended water main alternative, and that came out to a conceptual cost of $620,000 with all the construction, the engineering, and contingencies put together. And the third alternative was similarly like a replacement kind to put it back on a sidewalk. It's a little cheaper than putting it underneath because it's easier to construct above ground, but it still would be visible, which might be a little bit of an eyesore on the bridge. So in discussions with the water department, they have agreed with our recommendation to move with the alternative number 2 in the bridge deck, utility bay underneath the bridge deck.
You can advance the slide. Thank you. So the next steps, so we did, within the report, we did go into some detail of immediate actions that could be taken to avoid closure of the bridge. This was done at the request of the town, also considering the condition of Hamlet Mills Road and trying to avoid closure of the structure. And I talked to the district bridge engineer, and while the traffic is currently supported over those 5 girders and they appear to be more than sufficient to continue to support traffic, you could put some blocking underneath the girders that do have deterioration. What you don't want to see is those girders sort of settling under their own weight, given that there is section loss of the web. It could put undue stresses on the girders that you have. So I don't see any need to do anything with the girders that are currently supporting the road, but you could put some timber blocking underneath those other girders to support them up so that they don't collapse underneath the sidewalks. It's just under their own weight. They're not getting any traffic loads. So I'm not concerned about the integrity of the bridge, but it is something that the town could do to keep it open for the duration until the rehabilitation is in place. And so, selecting an alternative and then advancing the development of your construction documents, which includes design and permitting, getting a bid ready set of drawings together. These are the steps that would be done during the next phase. So there would be initial Mass DOT partnering. Every bridge greater than 10 feet in the state of Massachusetts goes through what's called a Chapter 85 review process. Mass DOT has jurisdiction to review under Mass General Law, Chapter 85, to review all bridges greater than 10 feet, any work that's being done to them. So you would like your engineer to get involved, get Mass DOT involved right away to discuss the design approach, get them on board, let them air any concerns, questions, so those can be taken into consideration as the design is advancing rather than at the end of the design when they're doing their review. Then you go into your Chapter 85 review and you're not exploring those big questions as have already been ironed out. There may be some environmental permitting that would be required and review with the Templeton Conservation Commission. And then establishing your funding source. So that's also something that we explored within the report. And then beyond design, you go into your bidding and your construction phase. And advance to the next slide. So these are some of the funding sources that could be explored. So the Transportation Improvement Program is generally the most generous option. So there are 2 ways of getting on the tip. There's through the Mass DOT Bridge Program, which is pretty formulaic. The chief bridge engineer has a formula that considers the condition of the bridge, the functional classification of the roadway, the average annual daily traffic, all these characteristics of the bridge are taken into consideration to prioritize it on the bridge program list. And there's also through the Regional Planning Authority Regional planning authorities don't historically fund bridge projects because they're very expensive and usually their budgets don't account for such large costs like that. They prefer to do complete streets projects. But these are unprecedented times. There is more funding available through the federal government, and that may be passed through some regional planning authorities. So you could involve your state legislators, your reps and your senator to try to advocate to get you on one of these lists. When I was talking to the district bridge engineer, he did say that this bridge is not currently on the bridge program list through Mass DOT. There's also the state transportation bill. I've spoken with Adam and I understand he's trying to get funding earmarked on that as well. There are some grants. The build grant is a federal grant. And there's also the MassWorks grant through the state. These are both very competitive. The build grant is a large effort and I feel is more competitive than MassWorks. And I don't feel this is a great candidate for the build grant. MassWorks is potentially an opportunity. We've talked about this. For this size bridge and this community, you would really have to tie it to some economic development. So we would have to look into that. We'd probably talk to the industry on the southwest corner of the bridge, Seaman Paper, and see if we could work something out there. They're also very willing to talk to you about your project and help steer you to make your application more competitive. I don't know if you have experience with MassWorks that you want to speak to.
Nothing more than what you said.
Okay. There's also ARPA funding. So when ARPA was originally established, it was for water, sewer, and telecommunication.
Yeah, so ARPA, every town got some allotment of money meant for either some COVID relief dollars or using it for water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. That was the intent of the American Rescue Plan Act.
So we understand that may have been relaxed a little and there's more funding available and not as strict. We haven't seen anything in writing.
Yeah, you'll want to confirm with the regulators on that specifically, but it might be an option.
Yep. And there's local borrowing, so you could bond to pay for the rehabilitation project, as well as Chapter 90 funds that are distributed through the state. So these are the funding sources that we've currently explored and discussed with the town.
I saw that you included those in here.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. So if you advance to the next slide, that concludes our presentation. So, we were just trying to give you a broad overview of why we're here today. The results of our alternatives analysis, go over the results of each alternative with you, and some of the next steps in the funding sources, and see if you have any questions about the information that's been provided.
Very comprehensive. I know Board Member Bennett watches the Chapter 90. We've identified some shortcomings, that things did not make it to the governor's final budget. Questions have been raised. I've been following the ARPA and the American Rescue Plan Act and its predecessors. And even though the final was released in December, we're still seeing some changes. So it's still a living and moving document. The target isn't quite secured.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
continually looking and just making sure we're dotting the i's, crossing the t's, because nobody wants to get caught do it inappropriately, and then the Treasury Department puts their hand down and says, pay us now. And you said they're going.
Yeah, that's why established programs, we can clearly tell you, you can use it for this and that. This is a new law and they're still kind of writing the guidelines. That's why we don't want to say for sure.
Definitely sailing in uncharted waters on this one. Yep.
Yeah, the MassWorks grant is substantial. It is very competitive. So, you would have to have a project that fit the description of their grant program, but it could potentially fund your entire project. There are sizable grants that are distributed through MassWorks. It's just whether or not you can tie economic development to the work being performed on the bridge. They do have a strap program where you don't have to tie economic development, but that's associated with a community that's smaller than Templeton. So unfortunately, that wouldn't work. But if MassWorks works, that would be an opportunity for next year. They do want to see advanced design documents. So you wouldn't be eligible to apply this year if you were interested, but you could start the discussions with them this year to see whether it would be a good project, a good fit for next year when you would be looking to start construction.
Can I ask if we decided to reconstruct the entire bridge, shut down that road, how, is there an estimated amount of time, of how long it's going to take to complete this?
Yeah, so I believe with alternative 2, we had said the road closure would be about 3 to 4 months. And for alternative 3, it was going to be 2 to 3 months. Now, we don't have a design yet, so these are just estimates.
Just an estimate.
These are
You need
estimates,
to figure
so
Design out.
yeah, so there are considerations that could be made to increasing the length of your day, encouraging work on the weekends to try to consolidate that schedule, to make it a shorter window, and it could change, you know, I'm saying it's 3 to 4 months now, 2 to 3 months, but it could be potentially shorter. We tried to be conservative with that number because the last thing we want to tell you is that it's going to be closed for 3 to 4 months and it's closed for 7 or 8 months. So, you know, we tried to be conservative with that number. I would see it getting smaller, not larger.
Great, thank you.
And we do have a member participating remotely. Mr. Curry, any comments or thoughts to enter?
I do. Thank you very much for that, that briefing. What I'm most interested, I think I can see Ron sitting behind Ty and Bond right now. I'm most interested in having a conversation jointly with the Water Commission to kind of take a look and see what some of the hidden items that we need to talk about. But I also like to try and figure out how we can fund some of the things like the low hanging fruit, like the permitting and the path to actually, you know, construction or something. Those are my concerns.
Thank you for that, Mike.
Mr. Chairman?
Good.
Mr. Chair? Oh, go ahead. I wanted to, Ron, I just wanted curiosity, which option do you all prefer? Over the sidewalk, drill, or in the box?
In the box under the bridge. The water main that's on Otter River Road or Main Street going over the Otter River Bridge, the railroad bridge before you get to Depot Road. It's done the same way.
Okay.
It's protected underneath there, and if you have to work on it, there's a spot where you can get in to work on it. We did have the problem with that water main a few years back where it froze and broke. It was easy for them to hook on and pull the old one out and slide a new one in.
That was my question too, about potential for freezing under the bridge, if there was potential for that. But I also wanted to comment on the fact that you did the research on the asbestos and hired a professional, and for the people in our community that are interested in environment, you did a risk PCs, you looked at that, the riverfront bordering vegetated wetlands. So that was much appreciated. They can see it in the report. I won't read it, but that was all taken care of. Looked at.
Very comprehensive report.
Yeah, it is.
Montaigne, do you have anything to add?
I do. Mr. Sozik and Ron and Mr. Driscoll and the engineers, we've met up 2 or 3 times at least, and then we met separate occasions as well with this project. Folks out there, TV land could hear me, but what we did is, and you know, obviously this project, you see the price tag associated with any of the alternatives, and quite frankly, even Andrea and I, when we were talking about it, it ultimately comes down to alternative number 1 for the town or alternative number 2, because the superstructure is just, we can't afford that. And quite frankly, I don't think we could afford alternative number 2 either. So what I did is I reached out to town council and wanted to get an opinion, because based on the fact that the board declared our ARPA funds revenue loss, he opinioned back that this would be an acceptable use for the town to use those funds to get alternative 1, which we can afford based on the numbers we have now, Because as the engineers already mentioned, the longer we wait, the more the costs can go up. And this is something that the town already committed $200,000 for. Also, I requested Senator Goby's office a earmark of $200,000 from the state. So we're looking at if we could get the $200,000 from the state and the $200,000 already have appropriated, that's about $400,000, and we have a little roughly what $2.4 million of ARPA. So at least the town's in a good position in the sense of receiving those funds. So it puts us where we could actually afford an alternative. And we discussed too the difficulty with the bridge shutdown, 3 to 5 months of not being able to get onto the other side of town. I mean, that's one thing where residents get extremely frustrated about. So alternative one, even though it's the lifespan's not as long, you could keep that bridge open. That's what really caught my eye with alternative number one. And they say 20 years, but that could be even longer. I mean, that's just an estimate. So I think that we're not ideally in the best position, but we're not in a bad situation either. I think right now we have the $200,000 appropriated granted after this report, and we pay this report. We'll still have enough to go to the next phase of the project, the design phase. So we could keep this project moving forward with the money that we already have appropriated. It's just a matter of what alternative the town's going to move forward with. And I think there's, like I said, it's not the worst situation, but it's not the best either, based upon what we can actually afford today.
Did you consider or look at any of the numbers, excuse me, for alternative number two? Because that's what I was waiting on when I went to the report.
We
I was
did.
looking at that with the numbers
We did.
and the possibility, and you don't think we can get there? You don't think we can find that?
I believe we could get there with the current money that we have out of ARPA. But if any costs go up, we're gonna be in trouble.
And to roll our sleeves up a little bit perhaps and look at the Mass Works option as well.
We're gonna weigh all the options, and
So definitely, we've been told no before. It hasn't stopped us from asking.
we're good at applying. So that's all I have to share with the board. We had some great dialogue. And not sure if through the chair to Mr. Sozik or Mr. Dav, if they wanted to add anything further that I may have missed.
That should be good, unless someone else has a question for me.
I would just comment on the options. Past history of the town, going cheap doesn't work out well. Not a discussion for this meeting or this subject right now, but this makes the strongest case, if there's going to be one, for a grant writer for the town. Pay off big time. There's a lot of funds out there. There's a lot of money coming. Yeah, the House did take the 100 million of Chapter 90 money out of their House budget. I popped an email off to Senator Goby and asking her if she could. Doesn't mean anything, but there's also the other infrastructure bond bill that the governor put forward. It's to something by the time, hopefully by like next year, by the time the State House gets done, they're back and forth with it. But there's a lot of options and a lot of money. And like I said, this is probably the strongest case we've had to hire a grant writer, in the next fiscal year. I think the payoff would be big time and more than cover the cost of it, even if it's just for a certain period of time. You look at just the city of Gardner, they spend about 500 grand a year going for grants and stuff. But again, I think their record today is like around 10 million. That's pretty dang good investment. That's like Rich Curtis, about 6 grand a year, and he gets nothing. In grant money he brings in each year that he's been there. So again, not for this meeting for these folks, but this makes a case for us to consider a grant writer to go after this other money, because cheap has not worked out well for this town. whenever we go, oh, it's economic, oh, we'll save money, oh, we're getting it for free, yeah. Takes the seat of your pants out 2-3 years down the road and then some. So that's my 2 cents. I'm an option 2 guy, and that's that. Thank you.
Mr. Co-Chair, I have to agree with Jeff on this, absolutely 100%. I have looked at numbers over the years being on the board and whatnot, and we have actually attempted it and had this conversation, and we really should put it on another meeting for a discussion in regards to getting someone to start writing our grants. We need a grant writer in the town of Templeton. It's facts. I mean, there's no way around it.
And my 2 cents go with Jeff's 2 cents. I mean, I highly recommend we go with alternative 2. And take our time, whether it's a year or 2, find some other grants or monies, federal monies. I'd like to see it done right. 20 years ain't that long. We're gonna be right back where we were. Just look at our roads. I'm not in favor of chapter 90 money because we need that in our roads. But I don't think a 20-year fix is for Templeton. I think the long-term fix. We need to move ahead and get ahead.
But the problem is finding the money.
Good.
Until we find the money.
Yep.
It's gonna be on hold. And costs go up.
That's the reality of it.
That's the reality.
Good discussion, good comments. Thank you.
Good report.
Excellent report.
Yeah, excellent report. Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda,
Thank you.
item D. Action regarding the town property use permit, Lions Easter egg hunt.
Not sure if you want to take that after the ones that are on the old business or take those first. There's 2 or 3 that are kind of.
But
That's item D.
yes,
According to the March 9th minutes, it says Lions Club Easter egg hunt application will be on old business at the next meeting. So, I mean, and my thinking is we have down on the old business, property use update and discussion on Lion Club's events. I mean, if we take care of D now and we say, okay, you can have your Easter egg hunt and pay you whatever the fee is, $25, and then they go and we get down here and we adjust the fees and suddenly it's only $10. I think we should, I would think it would be better if we looked at the property policy and decide on that and make the call on town-sponsored events and then say the Easter egg hunt. I'm just thinking if we approve one and then we go down and look at the policy and we change something, what do we do? Call them up and say, oh, by the way, you know, your next event will cost you $10, but you got to pay 25 for your Easter egg hunt. I'm just, I'm thinking that they're kind of intertwined, all 3 of those
Yeah.
things.
we will address that in the old business, which is coming up. So we will defer item D and incorporate it into area 6 on old business.
We can do that. I took it, we could vote to waive the fee and then vote on the policy. Waive the fee, send them on their way, and then as the policy's written to waive the fees for town events permanently, right? We rewrote the policy to waive the fee.
We haven't
for
voted
We
on
haven't
that
voted on that, though.
policy.
That's still
We
in
need
draft.
to be careful with that. You can't jump.
Right, okay.
And I would also note, if I may, that within the policy, and I'm always happy to get a second steak free, but this is in front of us to discuss whether we make a decision on Lions Club's events as town-sponsored events, but right in the policy, under the fee schedule, it states non-resident status and town-sponsored status to be determined by the town administrator or his designee. So we voted on the policy back in March 9th. So if you accept the policy, then whether the Lions is town-sponsored event or not would not be up to the Board of Selectmen. It would be up to the town administrator. The thing that we would be, from my view, as policymakers, would be the fee schedule and how you determine fees or what charge and so forth. I'm just reading what's in the policy. So we wouldn't necessarily be, again, but it's in front of us. So if we want to change that part of the policy, well, hey, we could knock ourselves out. But I would just like to get that in order. So they don't sit here getting a fee for one thing and then they leave, or they sit here and then we say, oh, by the way, we're dropping the fees. Well, come on back and we'll redo our vote. I mean.
But can I make it?
And I would also ask if we ever got a proxy that we discussed back before, when you came for the Christmas tree stuff, about the group that controls, according to the deed, that part of the common in front of the fire station. I believe we discussed, the thing about getting an agreement with that group that would let the Board of Selectmen make the call on approving the use of that section of the common. I don't know if we ever did that or that was followed up on or not. I know that's not part of the agenda thing, but I'm thinking long-term, when they're gonna come for events, if it's on that part of the common, the deed says that the selectmen really don't control that, but again, we discussed and said we were gonna try to get an agreement with them in writing. So it'd be on record. So when somebody comes, we could say, yeah, we can do that. And if anybody stands up and says, whoa, we'll say, no, we got that in writing already. I just hate to see this keep coming back over and over and over again. If we could get it cleared, we'd be done with this as far as the board. I don't need to confuse stuff, but I'm just looking at this long term and.
Right.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, because obviously we're still here for the long term, so I don't think we're gonna be,
Well, and you're not the only ones that come
Exactly.
to use these things, and I would just like to get it ironed out, so it's one less thing I have to read.
So my thought on this, because they're obviously right here, and I'm looking for their answer right now, is that I make the motion that was suggested that we could make if we all agree with it. We could do that motion right now and be covered under the current policy that we've already voted into town. Later on in our meeting, if we choose to change that policy, it doesn't affect the Lions Club. Follow policy that's already right there right now. Correct? Then we go back down, we finish out our meeting and we talk about the policy that we're currently following. We can have a conversation with the town administrator, basically. And we're still following our policy and the decision will be made for them, so they don't have to wait through all of the paper, is what I'm thinking. That was my thought when I reviewed it.
That's how I looked at this as well. I was just gonna take them in order, address item D now.
Right, address it
then
right
we
now.
would Address the old business.
So-
when we got to the old business.
So I would like to make a motion. I move to refer this to the town administrator as a town-sponsored event for approval.
Motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
So you want to toss the Easter egg to the town administrator?
Yeah, and I'm guessing he's gonna catch it.
Mark this on the calendar. Julie and Jeff agreed twice tonight. Second.
Damn.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just need clarity. So in the restructuring of the policy, right now, there's fees. Correct?
Unless they're town sponsored.
Unless they're town sponsored, so that's already established. I want to make sure that.
That's already
it's-
established by policy.
It is.
Okay, so, okay, I get it. I just wanted to be.
And I think
clear on
that's
that
what
before I
Jeff's
vote.
point was.
So there's no fee for them.
If with Julie's motion, there wouldn't be.
With my motion and the passing of this, it would, the decision will be up to our town administrator. He can take a 5-minute
Correct.
break out in the hallway.
Okay.
Any further discussion or comment? Okay, motion made and seconded on the floor. Move to refer the town administrator as a town sponsored event for approval. How do we vote? Jeff,
Yes.
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
I vote yes as well, and I got a message while we were finishing up the presentation with Ty and Bond from Mr. Curry. He apologized for the background noise. And it's not that he does not want to participate, but he says, please do not enter me for a roll call votes. So I'll work with that. I understand he's stuck at the airport right now, so.
So I would still call on him and just put it out of chair. Just for the record, I'll still
Yeah.
call on, have him out of chair.
I'll abstain. I'll abstain.
Duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Curry.
That works.
That covered it.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
you.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Absolutely.
Have
Can I
fun.
ask, Brian, will there be an Easter bunny at the Easter?
Yes,
bunny?
there will.
Do we know who that person may or may not be? It's the real
We
guy.
did. Not to be
Had
publicly
to ask, sorry.
disclosed.
With a new costume too.
So
There
yes,
you go.
yes, we are
Perfect.
gonna have an Easter bunny.
Spoiler alert, any parents with children in the room.
No, we're getting the real one. You just stated
You just
it.
said so.
It's the Easter bunny.
Thank
So
you.
Holly, we're all set with all
Thank
our
you.
documentation
Yeah,
we provided to you so far.
and I'll get an email to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Is chocolate involved? Is there an age limit?
It's grade 1 to grade 4, or actually preschool,
I'll go back to fourth grade.
preschool to grade 4.
You're partial to the fifth grade.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
have
Thank
a
you
good
for your
night.
patience
It's
tonight.
nice to see everybody again.
You too. Nice to see you.
Next on the agenda, item E, action regarding Templeton Developmental Center. Mr. Lowenstein, do you want to lead us on that?
That will be appropriate. We received this correspondence from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts from the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. They're looking at doing some disposition out at the Templeton Developmental Center. They reached out to me and they want to start getting together with the town department heads here and me. But I told them, I think the best approach, so the public's aware of it, is to send a letter to have a representative from the select board be involved with that process as well. And you see the letter from the deputy commissioner for real estate requesting that, so we could get that process moving. That project's been going, I mean, that site's been there for quite some time, and I think the state's trying to make some progress over there, so.
Mike, if I may, Mr. Chair, my question or concern, or just clear something up, under my town government, there's still Templeton Development Reuse Committee. Holly's listed as contact. The last meeting thing they have listed, it was like 2015. I don't know if that committee was ever, because the Common Improvement Committee, I think, was dissolved, but it's still listed under my town government. I don't know if that one is still, I know there was planning board member, there was, I don't know, 5, 6 people on it. Again, the last thing that's posted for a meeting, and there's no minutes posted, so I can't tell. But it was back in 2015, and Holly Young is listed as the contact person or who posts meetings and stuff. So I just, if that committee's still in existence, and has it gone away, or is it just like interest waned, or what? That would be my,
Didn't we appoint Mike?
I just
and
like to see if
Julie
we
to that?
dissolve that committee, or if it's still just floating out there.
I thought we
That
appointed
is-
Mike and Julie to that.
That's way before my time. Holly, were you here during that or?
Yeah, the state was involved and there were several people that were on the committee. And I think it was in 2015 that we had a meeting and the state kept putting it on hold.
It's when it closed, and they were talking about selling chunks of that land and things like that. So, and I remember we got, because part of it's in Phillipston, or was then, yeah, it's one of them divided up things. And I just want to make sure, if we said, select board thing, if we still have that committee, if we want to consider that, or what. I remembered we had that committee, and so I went looking, and I was like, I thought we had met or appointed somebody more recent, but
Yep.
the Rolodex sometimes sticks. But I just wanted to remind people of that we did have that committee at one time. So, and I don't want the state coming. Well, it sounds like the state didn't remember it, but I mean, that's an important thing that we should be involved in and keep up what's going on there, because there's a resident, I think Mr. Casey, he worked up there and he still keeps it, because he came to a meeting, selectmen's meeting, not a long time, or a town meeting, one of the two. I think it was a town meeting, taking open space thing with when, like Carter's time. So it wasn't that far back. And he had said at the time that the state was looking to sell a lot of that parcels of land and stuff up there. So, and town discontinued Freight Shed Road, or voted to have that because we didn't want to have plowing, maintenance and all that stuff responsibility when they started rolling, the state started rolling back on that. But it is, it's important for us to, I think, to get in on that in case, just to be abreast, be in the room, if any development, sales happen, something big is going to do this or that. Because that has an effect on other things, but could have town water sale, for example, town electric,
Well, the good thing is the state wants to work with us and they reached out, so.
Well, like I said, I just want to remind everybody that we did have a committee at one time, meeting with DCAM and all of that. I don't know if there's any records going, we may have.
I think about 3 years ago, we had a meeting. It was me, Carter, you, police chief, I don't know if you were there, discussing the property over there. But what's gonna happen, they're gonna divide it up and see if we have first options after they divide it up and what we're interested in, for the town's interest.
Yeah, but Jeff's talked about was there's a committee before even us, we were
I
here.
know, but we can touch base on it.
Wasn't CPC gonna buy a piece of that land in the town? It was voted no. At town meeting.
That may have been
Probably
before.
three-
I don't recall.
2019, and then when we reorganized after the election last year, we appointed Mike and Julie as liaisons to that.
I believe we appointed them to that committee. I
Yeah,
think we've been appointing select board members all along, just in case the state
yeah,
decided to
yeah, because
actually.
I was on it before, then something happened during COVID and
The CPC put together an article for that property?
that's what Mr. Case spoke about. He
Yeah.
said it was all wetlands. It wasn't worth.
Yeah, but we do, the CPC, we did buy a bunch of stuff up there.
When was that?
And then it,
I'm thinking it was right when when I first came on, 2019.
Well, there was a swap of some land
yeah,
around, all up in the woods and everything, and so that they could do something, we had to give up some town land and
yeah,
get something back in exchange for it and everything. That's what Ken Case, when we were talking about that at town meeting, because the state wanted to do something. And we had to swap land that we owned to get different land, and the state took ownership of it. So that way, the state wildlands could take some of that,
There was a
take
big
sections,
conservation.
so that it
thing.
could, it could be
DCR.
opened up for hunting and fishing and hiking trails and stuff like that. There was swapping of the land back then.
That was before COVID, because he didn't have a mask on.
No, correct. It was back, Carter was here, back when that happened. And it was,
2019.
the other thing is with the fire department is using at least one of the old buildings up there. We use it for training through decamp and everything like that. So
I just don't recall that happening or recall it at town meeting.
It was, but he spoke to it in one of the land
And I
things
thought
that
John
we did.
Henshaw spoke too, as well, to defend it, to defend CCCs.
We
We're talking
accepted
about
land for-
Fern Cove, Templeton Development.
But anyways, I just wanted to remind people of that we did have a committee at one time. So this really shouldn't
We
be.
asked Julie if she understands any or can speak to it possibly.
That at one time they had a committee that was looking at the land. Correct, they did. I was also on that committee. It was through decamp. It's a little bit different. They're getting ready to do some sales and such. It's a little bit different, and they were looking at wetlands and stuff like that, but it really never evolved.
Right.
Kind of got stuck. So they're going a different route is what I can understand from all of this. That's all. They're just going a different way so they can get it done.
Sounds like we have a lot more questions than we have answers, and we need to do a little bit of homework. It would probably be better if we moved this, deferred it to our next meeting and made it an old business item. So we don't make a decision that we have to go back and change our mind on, and
So we'll do some research on that committee.
Hey, this is Mike, Mr. Chair.
go ahead, sir.
Hey, I realized that there, we might have made some appointments and there, we might have been a committee before, but why don't we just react to the letter and appoint someone in the interim to work with Adam? I mean, at least that reacts to the letter that we got, and then we can sort out who is on what committee and if it's still active or otherwise. Over.
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you. You wish to entertain that as a motion, sir?
I don't have the language in front of me, but I would make a motion to have Julie Richard be the representative to work with Adam in the meetings with DCAM and PDC.
Mr. Chair and Mike, Mike, I really appreciate that suggestion. However, I will be abstaining from this due to a conflict.
Okay, understood.
Sorry.
Mr. I was going, Mike.
He's leaving.
You have a question for Mike?
No.
What the heck? If you want to amend your motion, Mike, you can.
Okay, I amend my motion to, I will make a motion that I'm sorry, Jeff Bennett be the representative to work with the town administrator on the TDC memo along with DCAM.
Second that motion, Mike.
Mr. Chair, could I amend that motion? I would also add that I would be Jeff's alternative.
Okay, so further discussion, did you copy that, Mr. Curry? Ms. Griffiths as an alternative
Yep.
for Mr. Bennett?
Yep, I amended.
Duly noted. Second amendment. as well?
Second amended.
Okay. So a motion with discussion and an amendment to the motion on the floor. Let's bring this to the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths.
Yes.
Ms. Richards,
Abstain.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Next up, item E, actions regarding health and dental insurance FY 23.
All good news.
You're on deck. It's all good news.
Another year of, well, no increase for fiscal year 23 and a reduction in dental. As I outlined in my memorandum, fiscal year 22, we received that premium holiday, which turned out to be with the overall a 7.78% reduction with the little adjustment that they increased it to, but with the premium holiday ended up being a total 7.78% reduction. We've been board and in our office, we've been working extremely hard on the health insurance front. I think a lot of folks can say this doesn't happen by accident. When you see all the other budgets and health insurance costs going up year by year. And this took a lot of time, a lot of work by not only our office, but the folks over at NFP. And we're very fortunate to have these numbers come in for 2 years in a row with no increase in health insurance. That is tremendous. And I'm not trying to pat Adam on the back here, but you know, I do commend the work the board did, you know, when we first got that joint purchasing agreement done. I think that, you know, gave us a tool that we could always go out to bid, which I think helped make the process more competitive. And, you know, we're always going out whenever we can to the marketplace to save money. We'll continue to have quality healthcare for this. And unfortunately, the IAC met, they didn't have enough members for their meeting. General consensus, everybody was in favor of this, and I don't see how anybody could say no. They just couldn't take any action, but consensus was from the IAC that they're in favor of this rate renewal. That's what I have for you, Mr. Chair.
I think that JPA definitely has worked to our benefit and advantage, and the MIAA on top of this has done some great work in our behalf. It was definitely the right thing to do when we pulled the trigger on that.
It's
2 years ago.
It's something we could all be proud of. That was, you know, there was a lot of paperwork there and a lot of going out to bid, but it turned out to be in Templeton's best interest.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Curry.
I move to approve the MIA renewal of health insurance with 0% increase in dental insurance with a reduction of negative 2.26% and for the town administrator to sign.
Second. That motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll ask again, any discussion?
If I can, this fiscal year 23 will be the year where everybody's on one town, on the town side of the house for health insurance and dental coverage.
Oh,
Excellent.
Outstanding. Hearing no further discussion, we'll go to the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths.
Yes.
Ms. Richards.
Yes.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. And just for the record, to set it straight, that was action item F. I believe I misspoke and called it item E. I was looking at the wrong line as I was advancing through the agenda. Item G. Actions regarding the approval of the town budget for FY 23.
Mr. Chair. You see the fiscal year 2023 budget in front of you. The only adjustment, and I got to thank Jeff for pointing this out, he went through all the accounts. Due to a rounding error, we have to decrease insurance and benefits by $1. So it would be $2,637,139. And that will total and bring us to the number listed there at $9,945,395. So I want to thank him for catching that. And that's our level funded budget for fiscal year 2023 on the town side of the house.
So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Curry.
so Adam, it's presented with the amendment that's gonna bring insurance benefits down to 39, not 40.
Correct.
Okay. All right, then I would make a motion to approve the town budget for FY 23 as presented with amendment.
Second that motion.
Any further discussion?
This is number 2 budget for you under your belt, isn't it, Adam?
Yes, indeed. Looking forward to town meeting.
Nicely done.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Curry, I have one comment. If you wish to amend your motion and add the verbiage as presented for the board to sign.
So moved,
Just a second.
or so amended.
Duly noted, and the second is amended to match that as well. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, we'll bring this to the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths,
Yes,
Ms. Richards,
Yes.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Excellent.
Item H. Action regarding approving the warrant for the annual town meeting 2022.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move to approve the annual town meeting warrant as presented in the Board of Directors to sign.
second,
Motion made.
Apparently, our town administrator has a couple of adjustments he wants
Okay.
to share with us.
I thought you had.
Sorry
to
about
second
that.
it.
No, no, it's fine.
We do. We do. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would just note that after checking the bylaw amendment for the advisory committee, the one that's in the warrant now is the one that the board voted on or gave consensus to originally. So it's all correct as it was presented originally to the board back December, whenever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you get some comments?
I do. There's a couple adjustments I want to make before you approve them. So I'll need Julie to amend her motion with the presented adjustments I'm going to bring to your attention. If we could go to consent agenda under section, that's Article 2.